Alright, welcome guys. Today's episode of the Freedom to Draw Unsolved Mysteries deals with stalkers / serial killers. Not just one, but two. That I suspect operated in the little town called Wilkes-Barre in the northeast section of Pennsylvania in the 1970s. And I'm going to show you all my evidence to lead to these suspicions today. Also, it is National Mental Health Awareness Day, so we have a great song in the background that's performed by a band you might have heard before. You probably know this song. YouTube won't let me tell you who it is, but I think you know. Here's a hint. Blink 182 times if you know it. So anyway, we're going to get to the case. This is the Freedom to Draw Unsolved Mysteries, by the way. I am John Krupa, your host. We're going to get to the story of Robert Hannon and Francis Hannon from the 1970s. I believe that this duo was at least stalkers and may have been serial killers in this area of northeast Pennsylvania called the Wilkes-Barre area in the 1970s. Okay, so I start off the story, and I'm going to draw them at the same time. You know, watch me draw them as I tell you their stories. So Francis Hannon and Robert Hannon, not related by the way, were involved with some wild criminal activity in the 70s in Wilkes-Barre. Francis was a VP of Renomade Incorporated, and Robert was his right-hand man. And in the past, there was many duos. I looked them up. It looked like there was about 9 or 10 sets of duo serial killers over the course of years in the United States. And I picked one as an example, one duo that maybe many of you heard about. They're the most infamous ones. They were called the Toolbox Killers. Their names escape me right now, but there was two of them, and they operated in 1979, in the spring and summer months of 1979. So these guys were caught for all their criminal stuff in 1978. So the Toolbox Killers were operating in Southern California. Now I bring them up because they were very well-known case of a set of serial killers that worked in tandem, like a duo, like Batman and Robin, if you will. But they operated in Southern California in the late 70s. We have some more songs in the background by the band that you probably heard of. I don't know, every time I mention who sings the songs, they nail me with a copyright sticker on my shows. I don't know what that's all about. I don't really care about that stuff. That stuff is just a nuisance to me. So in Wilkes-Barre in the 70s, there was, in my research, I found there's 4 things that really keep reoccurring when you're doing research on these men here. So, of course, Robert and Francis Hannon. And the other three things that keep coming up are the police misconduct in Wilkes-Barre in the 70s, the murder of Olga Burns in 1975, or I believe it was 1973, yeah, and the Juanita Marie Todd murder in 1972. And like you may have heard of the Juanita Marie Todd murder, because I did do a show on that in early January of last year, I believe it was. So I will link that in the description of this video. So when you're done watching this video, you could go back and watch the Juanita Marie Todd. I do touch on her case in this video as well, because like I just said, a lot of stuff with these men overlap her, and I'll get into that later. So this article is from April 22nd, 1978. Luzerne County Common Pleas Court judge set bail at $150,000 Friday. This was in April, for Francis Hannon, who was 32 in 1978, who was accused of the murder in connection with the death of Olga Burns, who was 60, but some reports say she was 62 and 63, but we're just going to go she was in her 60s. Mrs. Burns' body was found last week in April in the basement of a home here in Wilkes-Barre. She had been missing for 2 years. An autopsy showed she died of head and chest injuries and asphyxiation. A preliminary hearing for Hannon, we're talking Francis Hannon, this guy, is set for April 25th. Now you fast forward to the next news article, which is May of 1978. So it's important to remember that these two were not brothers or anything. They were just business associates, and this guy became this guy's right-hand man, pretty much. They were involved in their business together, and they were friendly outside of work, too. So this article's from May 4th, 1978. Wilkes-Barre, PA. 2 Wilkes-Barre men arraigned on murder charges Wednesday, stemming from the death of a 60-year-old woman in her 60s, whose body was found 2 weeks ago in the basement of a house. And I believe that house was on Blackman Street in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Francis J. Hannon, 33, and Robert C. Hannon, who was 23, both pleaded not guilty Wednesday. They are scheduled to stand trial in June of 1978. And that's another thing I just realized here now. This guy was 10 years older than this guy. And I did the math. If this guy was still alive today, which I could not find any information on these two. This is the only pictures I could find, by the way. There is so little information about this duo. It's not even funny. But anyway, if this guy was still alive, he would be in his upper 80s. So math tells me that this guy was 10 years younger. This guy was alive today, he would be in his upper 70s. So it's more of a probability that this guy might be still alive. And I have no idea where he is. If anybody out there knows watching this where this guy is, Please let me know in the comments. I couldn't find it. Both men, who are not related, are charged with killing Olga Burns of Wilkes-Barre, who was reported missing more than 2 years ago. Luzerne County District Attorney says Robert Hannon told them where they could find Mrs. Burns' body. So it does seem like this guy snitched on this guy. Francis Hannon was released last week on $150,000 bail. Robert Hannon has not requested bail and is being held at undisclosed penal institution, said the DA. So this guy had money, this guy didn't have as much money, it seems to me. Like I said, these guys were impossible to find any information on. So now these guys were also involved with an abduction case. And here is the story on that. So here's the story on that. In 1975, it's suspected that Francis/Robert Hannon kidnapped a magistrate. He was unable to identify his two captors because of being blindfolded. And handcuffed. However, he overheard the two men discuss a telephone number that was later traced back to Francis Hannon. Hannon was charged with the pickaxe slaying of Olga Burns, who's the woman that was in her 60s. So he murdered her with a pickaxe. Pickaxe slaying of Olga Burns in 1973. She was 60-something years old. The magistrate was abducted a few days before election. He was taken to the Delaware Water Gap, which is an hour and a half from where all this stuff was taking place. During the drive, the two men made a stop, and one of the men headed towards a payphone. He shouted back to the second man on a confirmation of a phone number. The magistrate memorized this phone number. Magistrate later escaped from his two captors, and after recovering from major injuries, he had that phone number traced by the police. That phone number led back to a company named Rent-A-Maid Incorporated. Francis Hannon, this guy, was the vice president of that company and was responsible for the day-to-day operations. This company went into residents' homes and cleaned their houses. And I did work for a cleaning company. It was a commercial cleaning company back in the day, and I had the keys to the businesses that I cleaned. So what he did was more of a residential thing. I think it is probable and possible that this guy and this guy, as he worked for them too, I believe, they both had access to residents' apartments or residents' houses. So remember that. This guy had the high probability of having keys to the people that he cleaned houses or apartments. Remember that, apartments. Important to note that he was charged with first-degree murder, this guy, when Mrs. Burns' body was found in the basement owned by his girlfriend. So this article is from September 1978. A Wilkes-Barre man charged with killing a woman whose body was found buried in the basement of her Wilkes-Barre home surrendered to the Lehigh County Sheriff's Deputy Monday. Francis Hannon, who's 32, is accused in the beating death of Olga Burns in her 60s, whose body was found last April. Police said she had been missing since 1975. Hannon agreed to surrender after Lehigh County judge granted a Commonwealth motion to revoke his $150,000 bail. The trial was to begin today in Lehigh County Court on a change of venue from Luzerne County Court. District Attorney said he would seek the imposition of the death penalty. So this guy we're talking serious charges here. Hold on, I gotta sharpen this pencil. We're talking serious charges here for this guy. It's important to note that it seems like this guy ratted his friend, this guy, out in leniency for the murder trial that they were both facing. I gotta stop dropping stuff. So now this article is from November of 1978, and this kind of has to do with the police misconduct that I was talking about earlier. The chief of police did not follow instructions in a firework case, and as a result was reprimanded. I never told him he would be back in uniform because I had no right to do that, and he knew, the police chief said. However, the one officer's allegation implied that the police chief threatened him not for failing to follow instructions, but for his role in the investigation. And another city patrolman, in his affidavit, when he's in court, said he attempted to relate to the chief of police information concerning the 1972 murder of Juanita Marie Todd. The patrolman said he told the police chief he knew of a woman who had information regarding that murder. That woman, said the patrolman, would not call the police headquarters because she felt there were too many leaks. The patrolman stated when he attempted to relate that to the police chief, the information provided by the woman, police chief responded, "We know about that. We have a suspect who fled the area, and we know where he went." The patrolman noted that the police chief did not follow up on that information he gave to the captain, and pointed out the woman who talked to him was arrested 3 days later for possession of drugs. So a detective in his affidavit indicated the police chief kept him out of certain investigations, including that Todd murder probe. Police chief did not respond in the allegations made in the Smith affidavit, the police patrolman's affidavit, but in response to allegations number 17 of the DA's report, stated he did not freeze anyone out of any investigations. So not only did that police chief freeze him out, he also arrested the woman that was trying to give information in the Todd murder, which is very suspicious, in my opinion. So the lieutenant for the police provided, in addition to his affidavit report, which outlined elaborate steps taken to ensure the secrecy of the whereabouts of Robert Hannon, which is this guy, the Commonwealth's chief witness against Francis Hannon, this guy. The lieutenant, who at the time was a sergeant, was threatened with suspension by the police chief at this time for Wilkes-Barre. Robert Hannon, the police chief, was transporting Robert Hannon to Lackawanna County Prison without informing superior officers. It was at the direction of the DA that the lieutenant kept confidential his activities concerning Robert Hannon. Now, this is all very confusing and complicated, but basically that lieutenant took this guy, transported him without telling his superiors, basically. Despite the efforts to maintain confidentiality, the patrolman notes in his affidavit that the police chief informed the mayor of Robert Hannon's whereabouts, and as a result of the disclosure of that information, authorities were forced to relocate the witness because the Robert Hannon manor was not listed as a specific allegation in the DA's report. It too was not answered by the chief of police or anyone else. It is apparent from the manner in which the DA carefully guarded Robert Hannon's whereabouts, he feared leaks. So this is very important to note, that there was corruption in the Wilkes-Barre Police Department. And it also is important to add that the police chief that was involved in all the scrutiny was later demoted. And the police, the reporters were asking, why was there no action taken on leads concerning the murder of Juanita Todd? This article is from November. Why is the mobile crime lab never used? Which it never was in the 70s. Why was the location of the Commonwealth chief's witness in the Francis Hannon case revealed to the mayor after elaborate measures were taken to keep the witness's whereabouts confidential and known only to a few. The police chief said he knew that he ran games, but the person indicted the police chief nothing to follow up on his information. This is in regards to a fireworks case. The police chief threatened a detective for the role the officer played in the arrest, and told the subordinate that he would soon be back in uniform. The detective in his affidavit stated that police chief told him, "I know you're behind it. I'll fix you. You're not so smart. You'll be back in uniform the first of the year." The case involved confiscating large cache of fireworks from a place in Paris Street, which is a street in Wilkes-Barre. So this depicts cover-ups and misconduct in the Wilkes-Barre Police Department in the 70s. And once again, it brings up these two men and the Juanita Marie Todd murder. I don't know, it could be a coincidence. Also could not be a coincidence. So this is the last one that I have. A probe into, this is from 1981. The probe into a 9-year-old murder intensifies. Investigations into the murder of a 23-year-old Wilkes-Barre woman, which occurred more than 9 years ago, once again has been intensified. Police city detective and another detective said new information has been received in the case. The victim, Juanita Todd, was pronounced dead at her home in Academy Street on September 28, 1972 at 6:30 a.m. The autopsy revealed that the woman had been stabbed 20 times, 6 times in the back of the body, 10 times in the front of the body, 3 times in the side of the neck, and once in the face. There were also bruises on the back of the head caused by blunt instruments. A portion of cloth had been tied around the victim's neck, causing the fracture of the bone. An intense investigation was conducted for many months following the murder. The probe was spearheaded at the time by the captain, police chief, and we're not going to name his name. The investigation took local detectives into many areas, including a section of Maryland. However, after long hours and many months, leads in the case were exhausted. It was noted that once a homicide investigation reaches this point, it is placed in a hold position, but it is never unofficially closed. So it's placed into a cold case position, basically. The lieutenant said that recently new information was received in this case and an investigation was intensified. Mrs. Todd's body was identified in the morgue at Wyoming Valley Hospital in the early morning hours of September 28, 1972 by her father, Eunice Todd of Wilkes-Barre. It was noted that the woman had been dead about 15 hours before the body was discovered, and death was almost instantaneous. A number of pieces of jewelry were found in the woman's home by the police captain and the police chief. The home it was noted, has since been demolished. Persons who can shed any additional light on the case are asked to call 826-8127 or 826-8121, and that's the 570 area code. Any information will be kept in the strictest confidence. So 826-8127 or 826-8121. That's 570 area code. And in closing, guys, the murder of Juanita Todd, when I look back on it, all the circumstances of that murder, which you can watch, I'll link it to this, to the description here. All the circumstances of that murder seem to be easier if there were two culprits as opposed to one. So I'll let you think about that. That's it for this case. It's very intriguing and mystifying. We still don't have any clues on what this guy is doing now. If anybody has any information, yeah, let me know in the comments. But peace out, true believers. We're almost out of time. Till the next time, peace out, true believers.